Hello everybody! It's Will, or hashtag bakingactor. Today I'm going to show you how to make a tart crust, just the tart crust. The one time I made this recipe, I completely forgot one stick of butter because I didn't read accurately, which is why it's still here, so that I can actually read it and make sure that I'm not making a mistake. Thank you, Ryan, for my bag of powdered sugar. I will use this before I buy more. All right, so it calls for these things together, and then, oh, I missed my whisk. And then, these are all the dry ingredients. Take your whisk and whisk them together. Now you're gonna say, well, won't that create lumps? Well, not really. You just want all the sugar and the flour to be kind of incorporated together so that when you put the butter in, then they're already together in like one unit instead of kind of separated apart. Okay, so I've whisked that together. Boom. Now, say hello to my little friend. It's just a butter knife, but I know why they call it a butter knife now. So the way that you put this recipe together is you have 2 sticks of butter, and it's supposed to be, it says 1-inch pads, but what I found is the smaller you can make the butter before you incorporate it, the easier it is to incorporate it and not melt the butter, because it takes a minute to get it all incorporated. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting the butter crossways this way, and then I'm flipping it to the side and cutting it crossways again. Whoop, or not quite crossways. And then once you have those 4 pieces, you can cut it in about inch pieces or so, tablespoon at a time if you will. And don't plop it in this because there's a lot of powdered sugar in here, so you'll get a big puff of smoke, but it will taste delicious. So that's 1 stick of butter. Here is the next stick of butter. Gonna do the same thing, and it's pertinent that this be cold. The butter has to be pretty cold because the heat of your hands when you start incorporating it here in just a second is going to warm it up, so you got to keep it cold before this. Like, don't let it come to room temperature. I mean, it can be out of the refrigerator for, you know, a couple minutes, but you don't want it to be room temperature. Unlike when you're making a buttercream icing, I've discovered you pretty much have to have the buttercream icing at the room temperature of a small shack in Jamaica. Otherwise, but not melted. Otherwise, your buttercream will not come together. Okay, so I've cut all my butter. I put this in here. Now, hands are clean except for touching the knife, but it's clean. It came out of the dishwasher, so we're good there, right? So now, what we do is, this technique is called rubbing. Now, here's what it looks like when you're done incorporating it. Kind of crumbly, not exactly sand, almost marbles. And I've got 2 tablespoons of water that's been chilled in an ice bath, okay? Everything just has to be cold so that it doesn't melt the butter. That's the last thing you want to do, is melt the butter. So I'm going to put the egg and the water together, and then got my handy dandy fork here. I could probably use my whisk, but I got to use that for something else. Just make sure that you break up the yolk. Whisk it together, or break up the yolk like you're going to make a scrambled egg, right? And pour this mixture into your well. Say hello to my little friend. Anyway, flip your dough from the outside into the center. That's what I like to do anyway. However works for you. If you want to leave me a comment to say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of, you should do it this way, go ahead. I enjoy learning new techniques all the time. All the time. Alright, so you can start to see the egg mixture, and it's turning it a little bit more yellow. Now, I clearly can't do 2 things at one time. If you watched my other video on how to make scones, then you notice that I like to make a ball over the bowl and then incorporate the other crumbs that are in the bowl into the ball. And if you keep your mixture over the bowl, or your dough over your bowl, then there's not as much mess to clean up. Now, I take after my mother, and I'm pretty messy. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to tell everybody. But I get my good looks in the morning and my messiness in the kitchen from my mom. Okay. So, now you've got your dough pretty good. And you can kind of see the marbling a little bit of the butter inside in the dough. Okay. You don't need to make too much gluten with this dough in particular because you want it to be light and fluffy, right? So you don't need to knead it a whole lot. Just make sure that it comes together really well. And now it's not even kind of sticking to my hands, right? So it feels like it's got enough flour mixture into it. If it was too wet or too sticky, you could incorporate a little bit more flour into it, and it would totally be fine. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do here is, oh goodness, is I'm going to kind of flatten it out because it's got to chill in the refrigerator for circa 30 minutes. Now, if you have other stuff to do, you can leave it a little bit longer, but I wouldn't chill a minimum of 30 minutes for sure, but not too much longer than that. But if you can see here, you can see some marbling of butter throughout. This is really great. All right, so that it doesn't dry out too much, we're going to cover this little flat dough here with some saran wrap and then stick it in the fridge so that butter can get cold again. So, first, you have to wake up the dough. All right. I'm going to take just a not necessarily star-shaped, but clover-esque shaped cookie cutter. And I've got this, I'm going to say it's about, it's probably 1/8 inch thick or so. And I'm just going to cut out these forms. I'm just going to take I'm going to use this small one because I probably want to get 9 anyway. This is a 9 muffin tin, and it's pretty shallow. And I'm going to say this is about the 2.5 inch opening at the top. Okay? So what you can do is, now that you've thoroughly cut through all your dough with the cookie cutter, just peel up the little star here, and as close to the center as you can, push down, and you keep the tops of your dough out of the cup. Okay, so these have been in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes, just letting the butter chill back down, and you can see they're kind of touching. So what I've done is I've taken a piece of parchment paper and I've made just little pieces here, and I'm going to stick it right in between them. The trick is take a fork after they've chilled. That's when I did it. You probably can do it before then, but you might tear it if they haven't chilled, and just poke the bottom. Because what you want to do with the fork holes is to allow the buttered steam to come out. So I'm going to put these in the oven for 20 minutes and we'll see what they do. Okay, so I got these out of the oven and they are so freaking cute. Now, they don't all look perfect, and it's okay. What I like about it is that you could be quirky and kind of cool. The ones that were in the bigger shells actually did turn out quite a bit more perfect. They have much more even sides, etc. But they've cooled for about 15 minutes. I turned them out and let them cool completely here so that the butter can then congeal again, and then you can put anything in them. What I achieved the other day was I put a little bit of a lemon curd in there, and then put some meringue topping and stuck them back in the oven just long enough for the meringue to brown so that it was, you know, the egg whites were browned and cooked and whatever, and then it was just, they were just perfect. So thank you all so much for joining me again on our tartlet tutorial, if you will. Please remember to subscribe and tell me what you think. Let me know what you want to see. I can't do it without you. Otherwise, I'm just cooking for myself. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.